A quick overview of the cardiovascular system and the impacts of COVID-19 on the heart. The cardiovascular system encompasses the following organs and structures: the heart, the blood vessels, and of course the blood. Its main function is to deliver nutrient and oxygen packages to all the cells in the body. The heart is composed of 4 chambers: the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, and the left ventricle. In an oversimplified summary, the heart receives oxygen-poor blood, and the blood travels from the right atrium down to the right ventricle. It flows through the pulmonary artery into a network of capillaries in the lungs. This is where CO2 is released from the blood and O2 is collected. The oxygen-rich blood then travels from the pulmonary veins, followed by the left atrium and the left ventricle. The heart itself is made of 3 layers of tissue. The first one being the thinnest layer, called the pericardium, the second one being the muscular tissue called the myocardium, and the third one being the endocardium, which lines the inside of the heart. The blood vessels are categorized into 3 types: the arteries, the capillaries, and the veins. The arteries are the thickest, which take blood away from the heart, which then branches into other major arteries that take blood into more specific areas of the body, such as the brain, arms, thorax, and the legs. These arteries diverge into smaller, thinner arteries called the arterioles to reach into muscles and organs. Capillaries connect arteries to veins and is the site of where gas exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs. Red blood cells actually fit as single file lines to squeeze through them. Lastly, the veins carry the blood back into the heart. Unlike the other vessels, veins contain valves so that the heart doesn't flow backward. Now that you have the most fundamental knowledge of the heart down, let's discuss how the symptoms of COVID could bring lasting damage to the heart and what it means for those who are infected and already have a pre-existing cardiovascular disease. According to Dr. Lewis, she writes that the population afflicted with cardiovascular disease were more than twice as susceptible of the general population to contract severe forms of the virus. The virus's effects, such as low fever, low oxygen levels, unstable blood pressures, and blood clotting disorders, places lots of stress on those who have vulnerable hearts. Heart diseases are also associated with underlying metabolic health issues such as type 2 diabetics, people with obesity, and people who are at risk of inflammation and risk of blood clots. The symptoms of COVID-19 will most likely exacerbate existing conditions and bring on a new tsunami of new afflictions. COVID-19 is also known to induce inflammation by releasing cytokines into the bloodstream, and thus overworking the immune system. Cytokine is a general term for proteins that are secreted by immune cells to trigger an inflammatory immune response against a pathogen or tumors. Some of the cytokines associated with the cytokine storm include interferons, which fight against viral and bacterial infection, interleukins, which regulate the differentiation and activation of immune cells, chemokines, which migrate immune cells to attract certain types of cells, and colony-stimulating factors, which are primarily linked to inflammation. This cytokine storm, which is when the body begins attacking its own cells rather than fighting off the virus, overwhelms many organs, including the heart. It also weakens the heart indirectly by disrupting oxygen supply and demand balances in the blood. The enzyme troponin, which is a protein that is sent into the bloodstream when heart muscles are damaged, measures the severity of the damage being done. Increased levels of it have been found in a quarter of ICU patients, while a third of these patients have also had a pre-existing CVD. The most critical form of heart damage brought by the virus is myocarditis, which is the inflammation of the myocardium. The blood develops low blood pressure and fluid in the lungs due to the heart's enlargement and weakening. Though the most severe cases are rare, there have been suggestions that asymptomatic heart inflammation have been studied in 3/4 of recovered patients. Another article on the cardiac manifestations brought on by the disease specifically discusses how the cytokine surge is responsible for damaging cardiac myocytes. ACE2 receptors are found in type 1 and type 2 pneumocytes, but could also be expressed in other cells such as endothelial cells. Pneumocytes are the cells that line the alveoli, type 1 being responsible for gas exchange, while type 2 produces and secretes surfactant. Endothelial cells form a single layer that lines all blood vessels and regulates exchanges between bloodstreams and surrounding tissues. The ACE2 receptor is the entrance in which the SARS-CoV virus uses to infiltrate the cell. With enough viral load, this could lead to direct and acute injury to the cells of the lungs, heart, and endothelial cells. Due to extreme oxygen supply-demand imbalance, cardiometabolic demand is increased because of hypoxia, which is a condition where the body is deprived of oxygen at the tissue level. In other words, the body is trying to overcompensate for the lack of oxygen in the heart and thus forces the heart to work harder. Anyways, thanks for watching!